Welcome. Take It Up with Jessica Lee. I'm here with Marcus Cauchi, who is the Managing Director at Sandler Training. Welcome to the show, Marcus.
Thanks for having me, Jessica.
I am excited to hear all about channel sales. I know you target a lot of the innovative tech companies that are between 10 to $50 million, and they want to scale up. And one smart way to do that is actually leveraging partners, strategic partners. And I want to hear all about your recommendation as far as go to market and best practices in generating revenue via the channel.
Okay, well, particularly in this economy, in the COVID era and post-COVID, where all your road warriors are now landlocked, there's no way you're going to be getting people going on a plane, because we're talking about 2 weeks quarantine either end. So if you don't want to incur a huge cost by building a land army of salespeople locally, which is a headache to manage anyway, then you probably need to look at the channel as your best option. And in fact, if we look at companies like Datto and ConnectWise, they IPO'd for $1.5 billion a piece, and they were pure play channel vendors. And their next nearest rivals, who were not, IPO'd for 100 million. So if you get channel right, and it is difficult, but if you get channel right, you can scale at an incredible pace, and you end up with really loyal partners if you do it right. But the problem is most people don't.
Yes, and I think that's where it would be really helpful to talk about it, because I think people do know that building a direct sales team is expensive, and to scale, leveraging partner is definitely a very important path to take. But how do they be successful in it, in picking the right partners, when to scale, how many partners? Maybe you can share some of those best practices with us.
Well, the majority of vendors go out and they try and recruit a land army of partners. And think of those like conscripts, in the Vietnam War, First World War, Second World War. They weren't volunteers. They were people who were signed up against their will. And you kind of get that performance out of the land army. And you end up spending most of your life refereeing children because of border disputes and conflicts, and who registered a deal first, and who gets a better discount, and all that kind of stuff. So what the smart money do is they build a special forces unit of partners, probably one per region, one per geography. Or if they have multiples, then they specialize in particular verticals. And the channel manager's job is not to phone up and say, Jessica, what have you got for me this month? Nothing, thanks, I'll call you next month, which is typically what channel managers do. It's to help them sell. Channel partners are coin operated. If you put money in their back, then they become incredibly loyal and they pay attention. But channel partners are not thinking about you or your company or your products every minute of every day. They are in business for themselves, and they don't care about you, your company, or your products. What they care about is their objectives, their goals. And so it starts way back. The first thing you have to do if you're going to build a successful channel is you need to look in the mirror. Channel is not a get out of sales free card. It's an opportunity for you to build relationships with other organizations where you help each other get better. In order to do that, the first place to look is the mirror. Are you a good partner? Do you value the channel? Because in organizations where the chief executive is on board and values the channel and then hires a channel chief, that can mean a 15 times higher exit valuation than if they're not. And the problem is that historically, most vendor organizations are led by someone who's come through direct and enterprise sales. And so direct sales is the golden child, and the channel is the ginger-haired, ugly stepdaughter of the direct sales. And so you get elevated and promoted faster if you're in direct sales. And That's where all the training goes. That's where all the money goes. And that's where all the power is. And I have a poster on my wall of the Pamplona Bull Run. You know, the bull run in Spain, where lots of drunk men dress up in white trousers and shirt with a red sash, and they run in front of 200 angry bulls. And the headline reads, "Tradition. Just because you've done it, always done it that way, doesn't mean it's not incredibly stupid." Now, the problem is that your typical vendor is looking to scale, but they do what they've learned first. They come from that direct sales background, and channel is an afterthought. So they're not set up well for it. So the people who go into channel, typically, not all, because there are some outstanding channel managers and phenomenal channel chiefs, but they are definitely in the minority. The people who get put into the channel are Tim Nice but Dim, someone who failed in direct sales, and they don't want to fire them because they're decent, maybe they've got a family, so they put them into the channel, and they say, well, what harm can they do? As they move their target 1 decimal point or 2 decimal points to the right. So they can do a lot of harm. The other type of people who get put into the channel are greenhorn salespeople, where they tell them, well, let them go and cut their teeth. That's probably, you know, let them go and practice in the channel. Now, the problem with doing that is that what you end up with is a lot of very frustrated partners. Your average MSP is owned by a 58-year-old man who is kind of keen to exit their business. In 2017, 30% wanted to exit. By the end of 2017, 70% wanted to exit. Now, they can't grow above 10 people. The average is eight heads in the partner. They're working 80 to 90-hour weeks. Their average margin has been squeezed down to 17% in their core business, which when you net that down is barely break even. Yeah? So you've got a bunch of very disgruntled, frustrated people who don't really want to be there. Now, when you look at the type of work that a channel manager does, they carry 90 different hats. They wear 90 different hats. Forrester produced an amazingly interesting infographic. And there are 6 buckets that these people have to operate from. And the problem is that when you look at a channel manager, they are closer in profile to a general manager than they are to a sales manager. And a channel chief is closer in profile to a chief executive than they are for a VP of sales. Channel management is without question the hardest sales job there is, bar none. All the others pale into insignificance when you consider that in the morning, they may be building a strategic plan, coaching some salespeople, putting reports in, then having to deal with contracts, then having to onboard a new partner. In the afternoon, they could be doing another half a dozen things. And that's just day 1 of the week. So it's a really tough job.
Yes, it is a tough job because they're trying to influence the channel salespeople. They're not dealing directly with the end customers. They have to go through the channel. And the channel partners have a lot of different other vendors that they are trying to also offer to their clients. So yes, I understand channel sales is it's a tough job. I want to ask you about some of the tips that you would like to talk about as far as like maybe only a small percentage of the channel partners are really the winners, and so it's important to really concentrate on the ones that align with your business and do generate success, as opposed to spreading thin across many partners.
Well, exactly. I mean, the first thing you have to do is establish, are they the right kind of partner for you? So, can you pin your logo to their office door, or are they operating out of the back bedroom? Is someone besides the CEO the top salesperson? How are they getting new business? If they tell you that they get all their business by referral, then you have to dig and find out, is that systematic, or are referrals a nice surprise? Because most of them stagnate. What kind of reputation do they have? Is their culture more technical than sales? How easy are they to deal with? Your cultures compatible? How do they feel about you talking to their customers? I mean, this is a really important one. And a great tip there is a lot of them have had their fingers burnt because vendors have gone behind their back and they've spoiled perfectly good relationships that have taken years and years to build. So one of the things that you can do, and this was developed by a very good partner of mine, Zach Selt, is rather than asking for the name of the company, assign it a code or a number so that the channel manager can work with the salesperson and coach them on how to win that deal. Because too often, the channel is seen as this fulfillment house, and their job is to bring leads, and then they're going to make their money on services. But actually, if you help them to sell, and this is a huge leap of faith, you should be investing in training your partner's salespeople to sell as if they are your own.
Yeah, I think that's important too. I mean, we talk about sales enablement a lot here, and how it's so important to provide those content in small bites so that you actually train them, nurture them, and continue to make sure that they are on top of their game with the right product information, market intelligence, and all kinds of information and training that you would offer to the direct sales team that you invest in the same with the partners.
I agree with you in principle. I'm going to challenge you on something though. What passes for sales training more often than not is bad product training. And no one ever asks the question, well, Jessica, that's great, but how do I use that to sell it? Why would anyone care? Because if your fizzy carbungulator is brighter and shinier than the Rippets, I don't care about that as an end user. What I care about is, can you solve my problem? Do you understand what my problem is? And are you best placed to help me fix it? And the problem is that most sales training, especially when it's done in the channel, is basically bad direct sales training, repackaged with channel sales training put on the front cover, and nothing changes. What you need to understand is that your partners might have 12, 20, 100 different vendors that they're selling their products of. Now, most CFOs and vendors ask the question when a good channel manager says, I want to train their salespeople like they were our own. The question that comes out is, well, they're going to sell Juniper's products or Cisco's products, not ours. Well, that's a risk you have to take, because your job as a channel manager is to help your partners be wildly successful. Now, in order to do that, you have to take the risk and be vulnerable enough to train them to sell well, whatever they're selling. And sometimes they're going to sell your competition's products, and you have to be okay with that. But very few vendors will take that risk. But the ones that do, interestingly enough, get paid back in spades because they feel loyalty. You're helping them achieve their goals, their objectives. When you're setting up the partnership, you need to be able to understand and articulate to their satisfaction what they are trying to achieve, because they're in business for their reasons, not your reasons. If you think that they want to sell your routers or your CRM system or your AI app, they don't. They're in business because they've got a wife and kids, they've got families to feed, they've got mortgages to pay, school fees to pay, holidays and vacations to go on, boats to buy, cars to drive. Yeah, they don't care about you, your company, your products, or whatever it is that you care about. And they really don't care about your channel manager's quota. Your channel manager has to care and has to go into service. Now, what that means is you have to create parity. You have to develop and establish equal business stature from the off, which means that you can't treat them like a third-class citizen. They're not this get out of sales free card. They're not a free resource that you can just exploit and use and abuse. And these are independent business owners, and you need to treat them with that respect. But if you haven't established that up front in the recruitment and onboarding phase, in the upfront contract that you establish with them, the boundaries, the escalation, the accountability contract, then what you end up with is a disparity. And then you get this parent-child kind of dynamic. And that really never works, which is why you end up with a tiny handful of partners. We see 2 to 4% of channel partners generating 40 to 60% of revenue. And those are the ones that have a great sales culture. They're the ones with great managers. But it rarely ever happens. And what you see is an awful lot of waste. And under this COVID setup, if you are not recruiting great partners and training them how to sell, not features and benefits, not technical spec, not producing those awful product data sheets that frankly, you may as well use as toilet paper. I mean, when was the last time anyone ever bought an enterprise product off the back of a data sheet?
Yeah, so one more challenge I think that partners have is that they have to be neutral, value-added reseller, and to their clients, they need to be a trusted advisor. So as a vendor trying to influence that partner, you're right in that the sales enablement content, the training, the learning content has to be modified with that perspective in mind.
Well, I interviewed Max Altschuler from Sales Hacker and Outreach last week, and he made a really interesting point, which is, and I'm a huge fan of great sales enablement technology, but the problem is that if you haven't got the basics right, what sales enablement does is it exaggerates the flaws in your sales system and your marketing. And if you get it right, it accelerates and it amplifies the strengths. But the problem is that most of the sales enablement that's out there is being overlaid against terrible selling, awful management. We did a survey globally last year, which came out in Q1 of this year. And we identified that only 6% of sales managers are qualified to be in a sales management role. 94% are not. And it's worse in channel management.
Now, what would you say are the great traits to be a good channel manager?
A great channel manager is somebody who is very good at reading the situation. They're highly adaptable. They've got a lot of ambition and drive, but they've got a good analytical mind, and they're comfortable making decisions with limited information. They are fantastic coaches. The best channel managers I know spend 50 to 70% of their time out in the field, coaching, training, and developing their salespeople within their partners and helping them be successful. They're highly collaborative. They're used to and comfortable with ambiguity, but they can cut through all of that. They're very clear in terms of their goals, and they're wonderful at planning. They are like Napoleon before the Battle of Austerlitz. Napoleon won the Battle of Austerlitz 2 years before a French soldier left French soil. He decided that which village and which general would surrender to him 2 years before any French soldier decided to leave France. And they're very pragmatic. They're good at process. They're high, and the other quality they have is they're highly self-aware. So they recognize when they're getting in the way, when they're getting emotionally attached, because to a large extent, they're cat herding, and the only currency they have is influence and trust. And trust is hard earned and quickly lost.
I want to ask for a recommendation on structuring the channel partners, because you mentioned about channel conflicts, and most people do have a problem with that. But there's some vendors out there that I've seen where they will compensate the direct salesperson and the channel partner when there is a conflict of going after the same client, and they both have some kind of effort in play.
Yeah, I mean, that's good, and that's good practice. But I also know many vendors who won't compensate the direct salesperson if a partner is involved, only if their own professional services people do the implementation, which is crazy because then they're competing with themselves. And in all fairness, vendors are riding a very precarious line. As the IT stack gets more and more complex, there could be 12 to 20 different vendors involved just in the security stack. The partner is the one that's got the relationship. And if you start playing fast and loose and start messing around with compensation, or you create the conditions through your compensation scheme where direct and channel are at odds with one another, the vendor's going to lose, because at the end of the day, the partner is the one with the relationship. And what we're starting to see is a lot more partner with partner. In fact, one of my MSP clients was only speaking to me on Monday about how they were going to have to develop a new role specifically to have someone responsible for other partners. Mm. Now, that's something that, it's around, but there aren't many of them. What we're also seeing is a trifurcation in the channel, where you're getting partners who just refer. You're also getting partners who are fulfillment houses, and then you get the full service partners. And so you're seeing a lot of complexity move into the channel. And too often, I think people treat it as if it's just like managing a direct sales force. It's anything but.
That's where you come in. So it's been a great conversation, Marcus. Thanks for sharing some of your knowledge on the channel sales side and best practices. Great. For those who are interested in learning more, I'm sure they can go and talk with you directly. Making channel sales work. That's right. Marcus Cauchi from Sandler Training. Thank you so much for being on the show.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
There you have it. Take it up with Jessica Lee.